My name is Kerosi Ruth, and I will be taking you through impact of poverty on economic development in Africa. Economic theory has long suggested that human capital, that is the education, work, experience, training, and health of the workforce, is considered one of the fundamental drivers of economic growth. However, some recent empirical studies have begun to demonstrate that higher rates of poverty are associated with lower rates of growth in the economy as well. African countries are now routinely among the fastest growing countries in the world. However, a recent study showed that poverty on the continent has increased again. The statistics are as follows. Overall, the proportion of people in Africa living in monetary poverty has clearly declined from 54% in 1990 to 41% in 2015. That is World Bank economist Luke Christian's interview. But the whole truth is that rapid population growth has actually increased the absolute number of poor people in Africa from 278 million to 413 million. Now, let's look at the impacts of poverty on economic development in Africa. Number one, poverty can be profound influence on the social, physical, and developmental needs of children and families. It's evident in our daily life as we see that it's hard for those people living in poverty to associate well with those people living in maybe middle class or people from well-off backgrounds. And then we have seen that it is even hard for those people living in poverty to access good health care, and good schools. So, number two, financial difficulties have an adverse effect on parents' emotions, behavior, and relationship, which affect their parenting or socializing strategies. You find out that those parents living with financial difficulties have a lot of stress and, of course, emotional stress, and this affects their behavior because when you have stress, even your brains do not function really properly. And this affects their relationship with their children and even their parenting and socializing strategies. The emotional distress of poverty predicts conflict and reduces warmth and support in parent-child relationship. Most of the time, even when those parents do not have money, there is a high possibility that on that day they might even argue on some things. They might even get violent and start fighting in front of the children, and this affects the relationship of parents and children because the children do not expect their parents to fight in front of them, and this can even affect the children emotionally because and even behavioral wise because the children might not know who to face in case they have a problem because they fear the violence of their parents. This relationship disruption contribute to children's emotional and behavioral problems, academic failures, and poor cognitive functioning, which are the basics of economical growth. Resources increase the investment parents are able to make in their children's development, promoting academic and social competence, of which these resources the poor parents cannot afford. With increased resources, parents are able to invest in the development of their children, providing the special care, time, and services necessary to support the children's emotional needs, of which we find out that the poor parents take a better of their time trying to make ends meet. Instead of being there, giving their children care and time to maybe know whatever that they are going through, they're out there trying to make sure that they have money to make their children get the basic needs to at least cover the basic need to at least maybe go to school, get good health, and have the basic needs that every child really deserves. So, depriving the children these resources. These investments contribute to enriched learning environment, higher standards of living, and safer homes and neighborhoods where poor parents miss all that. Greater family resources appear to reduce risk associated with the stress of poverty and help create environment that promote competent development. The distress caused by poverty seems to predict lower positives, such as self confidence and school performance, supportive relations with peers, and higher negative child outcomes like antisocial behavior, depressed mood, symptoms of anxiety, which will affect um, development because they are actually basics to developing. In contrast, higher family incomes and investment in children development appear to have beneficial influence on long-term development or success. The economy research on how poverty has impacted economical growth in Africa suggests that individuals living in poverty face an increased risk of adverse outcomes, such as poor health and criminal activity, both of which may lead to reduced participation in the labor market. Some researches suggest that adverse health outcome can be due in part to limit access to healthcare as well as greater exposure to environment hazards and engaging in risky behaviors. Additionally, to higher levels of air pollution and living in urban areas close to highways can lead to acute health conditions. Um, Data suggestions suggest that engaging in risky behaviors such as tobacco and alcohol use, a sedentary lifestyle, and a low consumption of nutritional foods can account for some health disparities between lower and upper income groups, as also points to links between poverty and crime. For example, one study indicated that higher levels of unemployment are associated with higher levels of property crime. With all this, I have come to a conclusion that the relationship between poverty and adverse outcomes for individuals is complex, in part because most variables like health status can be both a cause and a result of poverty. These adverse outcomes affect individuals in many ways, including limiting the development of the skills, abilities, knowledge, and habits necessary to fully participate in the labor force. Research shows that poverty can negatively affect economic growth by affecting the accumulation of human capital and rates of crime and social unrest. Thank you for listening to me.